Okay, cool. So live stream is up. So yeah, so we were talking about college right now. So the way when I went to college for associate's degrees, they basically had us repeat almost every single class that we took in high school, and so that means like your math class, your English class, your science, basically like everything except for unlike high school where it's like you need every single year you'll take kind of a repeat of the same classes, which it was in my case. Um, when I was in community college, they had a set like list of what courses you needed to take or what subjects you needed to take and how many classes within that subject you needed to do. So they had like your English requirements. In my case, it was only two English classes. First one was like basic English, but they call it writing and inquiry, which um, basically it's like two essay classes. Um, in my case, I think like each class maybe wrote like three essays, but they would kind of like break it up. Like you would work on this essay, you would first work on a rough draft, and then you would do some research or something, and then put that in there, and then do final draft. And and when I was in community college, they gave us three options of how long you wanted to take the class, which is something I really loved because you had an option of taking it like a traditional high school class, which would be like 6 months. Um, but when I was in high school, they did a really awful system. They had you either took it like every single day for half the year, which is like 6 months, or you had A day or B day classes, which is basically every other day you would take the class, but for the whole year from August to June in my case. Um, and then you had a third thing, which were for like classes like nobody cared about. It would be like every other day for half the year. And most cases, people took a mix. Basically, it was a mix of A day, B day, and then every day for half the year. So, and each person was required to have four classes a day. So it'd be like for 1 year, you would have say like algebra in the morning, like first class. Second class would be like your biology, and then third class you'd have history, and then somewhere in history you would go to lunch and then come back. And depending on what lunch they assign to you, you either go to lunch first and then do history, or you go to history, eat lunch, and then come back for more history, or history and then go to lunch and then go to your fourth class. Yeah, so it was a really weird system, and every year they would change it up. Um, and then like your fourth class would be like say like PE or like computer science or something like that. And yeah, but when you're in college, in my case, you had an option of taking it the class 16 weeks, which is half a year, basically like August to December or January to May. That's your first option. And then you had a second option, which was 12-week, which was a really weird system, but it worked. I only had that once. And for me, it would be um, like August to early November. And then they had 8-week classes, which was my favorite. It would be like August to October, October to December, or January to March, or March to May. And you select that time period of how long you want to take the class. And then you check on the availability of what class you want to pick, and that each professor or teacher would show what they offer. And it would be either 2 times a week, or 3 times a week, or once a week. And I would tend to pick once a week. thing is, they have each class, they assign a certain number of credit hours. Typically, they assign 3. If it has what they call a lab, it's 4. Now, what does a lab mean? In terms of like a science class, it literally means you need to go to like a laboratory and do some sort of experiment. One time I took biology, but I took it online and I took it during the summer. Summer, you cannot have 12-week or 16-week. You can only have 8-week classes in my case. And I specifically scheduled my courses so that I took biology during the summer for 8 weeks because I hated like science and math at that point. And basically we had a website where they had virtual like experiments and like a basically it was like a game, like a flash game, and you would basically like drag and drop things into like a box and the box would like change things. Like if you're doing chemical reactions, like you pour in fake like hydrogen and fake oxygen, and then you would get like water or something like that. Um, Kind of as like an example, but if you're in a real university, you would have to physically like go to some like actual laboratory, put on a lab coat and goggles and like wash your hands and do all this like crazy stuff that I was like, nah, let me just sit at home on my computer and just do it. Because it's a lot easier in my mind. Um, but then you get people arguing like, oh, it's not the same education, this and that. But in my case, I'm not going for a science degree. I'm looking for a business degree. And I originally went to college to get a degree in art, like in drawing and something like that. But back when I went there, I didn't really realize you can't. It's not really easy to get a job with an art degree. You can, but it's like not easy to find a job, and they don't pay as much as like a business degree. And so I figured, well, either way, I still need to go to school. And then if you really want to work with art, a lot of jobs you don't really need a degree for art. But that depends on who you're asking, because some people say, hey, you do need training. Other people say, no, you don't really need training. You just need skill or talent. But it's an argument depending on who you're talking to. But I went for business. Um, and so basically, I switched from art to business, and I did business starting from South College, which was another reason why I kind of started over. So English was 2 classes. It was one writing class and then another writing class, but they called it research in the discipline, which they love to give like advanced names for classes, but it's sort of I don't like the idea of it. Um, Basically, it was more of a research paper class. You write an essay, research some topic, and my topic was like, um, and I picked something that was kind of like easy to write about. I wrote about how violence in video games, like I wrote for the idea that violence in video games can cause people to basically be violent, which it was kind of I just picked some topic that I knew information about. It didn't necessarily have to be true that I agreed for it. For example, in real life, I don't agree with the idea that people become violent after violent games. Um, yeah, but I just wrote about it because there's so much stuff you can connect to it, like research that people have done. Um, but I did that for my um, 2 English classes. And for math, I only needed to take one math class, which was I took statistics, barely passed it, but I passed with a C. When I'm now, yeah, and now the thing is, in college, or at least where I am at, their system is in order to get credit, basically, in order for you to complete your degree, in order to graduate. Say that again. Oh, what's a degree? I don't know what that was. Um, oh yeah. So basically, in order to like have it go towards your degree and finishing college, you have to get at least a C. You can technically get a D. Yeah, basically you have to get a C. Now you can get a D but that's only if you don't want to take any more college or get any further higher degree. Because if you try to apply for any other degree and you have a D, they're going to either not accept you or they might not accept that credit. It won't transfer basically. So you have to basically get a C or higher, but instead of it being a 7-point scale, it's a 10-point scale. So basically you have to get 70% or higher, which I ended up getting a C, so it was somewhere between 70 and 79. Yeah, and I don't even know what my grade was. Math was so tough at that point where I was like, I just need to pass because I don't want to take it again. Yeah. So then they broke science down into natural science and social science. The difference between the two is natural science is what people really think science is. Basically biology, physics, chemistry. And when I went to Central Piedmont Community College, they only had 3 options. It was chemistry, biology, or physics. When I went to South Piedmont Community College, they had like 7 options. It was biology, chemistry, physics, and then you had geology, astronomy, I think like zoology or something. It was some like random subjects. And I picked biology because I thought it was going to be the easiest. But it was really tough. But I passed with like a C, and I was like, fine. I don't need to take science again. So, but the thing is, they only required 1 credit for natural science, which I took biology and I passed. Then for social science is a really, really broad spectrum of classes. So those are your history classes, your sometimes they consider business classes to be social science. Depends on the school. But I took economics, microeconomics, macroeconomics. There are what I found out now is economics are almost each class is very similar to one another. They sort of teach almost the same thing, or like at least the same ideas. Um, and I had a really good economics teacher, and I passed A's of both economics classes. And I almost recommend people to take economics. It's almost depending on who your teacher is, the class can either be fun or you learn about a lot of good stuff, or it's good practice to at least like train your mind in thinking how businesses work. So that's why I usually recommend people to try economics. But the thing is, it's possible to have a bad economics class. And what I mean by that is a teacher who demands for you to learn a bunch of formulas and it turns into a math class and you're putting in numbers into some kind of economics formulas like calculate the supply like trend or some kind of like random things that won't necessarily be as useful in real life. Like maybe a formula or something would help, but it's like how often are you going to be using that formula versus learning a actual like skill that would help you. So that's the thing with economics. You never really know what you're going to have. But I'm taking my 3rd economics class, and first 2 I passed. Third one right now, I have 100 so far as I know. Yeah, so I took micro and then macro. The difference is micro is like small common economy versus large economy. So your micro is like your local businesses, local scales, like a little town or whatever. Macro is like the world, international markets, like stock markets or something like that. And now I'm taking environmental economics, which in my case, it's going for an elective. Electives are classes that don't fit in any subject really for your requirements, but depending on your school, it's basically like extra classes. to, I guess, like broaden your spectrum of knowledge, is what I was told one time. And it's a really weird thing, but basically it's like your extra classes, like art classes, music classes, religious studies, um, like history classes that don't for some reason count as history, like anthropology would be something that's more like electives in my case. Um, what else? But see, what I had to take was one math class, two English, one biology. But I had to take a bunch of social science classes because I was going for business, even though my associate's degree doesn't say business. Um, yeah, mine just says associates in arts, which, depending on who you're asking, might not mean anything to, hey, you have some knowledge, you went to college and you know some business stuff, which is on like the good scale. Some people look at it and think it's nothing, which I don't know why. Um, but yeah, I had to take two economics classes. Then I had to take U.S. history. Then I had to take psychology. Psychology is considered social science. The other option is sociology, which is very similar to psychology, depending on who you're asking. Um, but I took psychology because I took AP psychology in high school. But when I took it in high school, I did a really bad job. But I figured, hey, let me take it because I've at least taken it before, and maybe I might remember some stuff. And my dad used to teach psychology, and he has background in psychology. So it was a very tough class. Barely passed it, but I passed it. So I didn't need to take it, and I'm not a big fan of psychology in general. Um, so I took that, and then I had like sections. I don't even know why I had to take it. Like I had to take one computer class because they required a computer class for everybody. And when they say computer class, they basically call it computer class, but it's nine times out of 10 introduction to Microsoft Office and how to plug in a computer into the wall. Plug into computer into the wall, how to plug a keyboard into a computer is usually like your first chapter. Basically, it's like if you have used a computer before versus if you haven't. So yeah, so that's like the first chapters. But once they get into Microsoft Office, then it gets difficult. Um, Especially depending on what part of Microsoft Office they want you to work on. Um, if it's like Word, usually it's easy. PowerPoint is easy. It depends on what you have experience in. Usually Excel, yeah, Microsoft Excel is usually the toughest because they require either formulas or just in general, people have very little experience with Excel unless you've worked in some sort of business or job that constantly uses it. I passed that class for B, I think. Um, but for some reason, I need to take another class that is almost like the same thing. And they call it database and spreadsheets. That's the name of the class. Yeah, and they call it. They don't even call it a computer class in my where I'm at now, my university. They just call it a data science class. Yeah, and the whole class is Microsoft Excel, so I have to take basically Excel again, but a bigger emphasis on Excel programming and writing formulas in Excel. I took one programming class in high school, so I have a little bit of help with that. But the thing is, the class is tough. And they even said that it's highly recommended. They don't require it, but they wrote in parentheses, highly recommended to have previous experience in such software. And I did it, and I didn't know what exactly that meant, but I just went ahead and took it, and then I realized what it was. Um, yeah, so I have to take basically some computer class again. Um, but back when I was finishing my 2-year degree, other than those main classes, everything else I took was art classes because art is usually my strongest subject. So I took like 6 art classes because they were an option to cover every single other requirement I needed. So I took art appreciation, which was like art history and then basics of drawing. So that was all considered art appreciation for one class. Then I took drawing, which basically another drawing class. Well, you're saying second art class. And I took principles of design, which is another art class. That class can be tough depending on who you have. Um, but I passed it. Um, then I took art history. Art history is a mix between art and world history. Um, and I actually found art history to be sort of easy, but I recommend taking it online. Um, and then a lot of the online classes, you can find information online versus if you're in class. Like they might, in some cases, not all the time, they can issue you, some teachers give you an exam, but because it's online, like if they have a question, you can kind of look up the question and get an idea what they're asking, or quickly look up information. Versus if you're in class, most of the time they give you a like paper with questions on it, and you have to either write about something or answer multiple choice questions. And they either are like supervising you, so you can't really go on your phone and look something up. Versus if you're online, you can. See that, and usually that because of that, I recommend taking online classes, but not all the time. Um, Math, what I found there's not really a big difference if you take it online versus in class. However, there seems to be a tendency that if you're in class, you possibly can learn information better from the teacher because teacher usually goes and shows you examples. While online, they don't always do that. In my case, most of the time they don't show you an example and you kind of have questions and you have to kind of figure it out by yourself or learn by yourself, which is not always easy. Um, and also, I'm trying to think what else. Oh, I had to take 2 communication classes, intro to communication and public speaking. They were identical. Basically, they gave you 5 different styles of communicating. Basically, one was like, basically what you had to do. I took one online and one in class. Both are the same setup. Both are the same type of things. One is like give like they require you usually doing like 5 or 6 speeches. Depending on the class, they usually give you a week or a week and a half or 2 weeks to prepare for your speech. And they all need like an actual written script of what you're going to say. And usually it's like an introduction speech like, hi, my name is this and that. I come from here. This is my background. But you need to make sure you're not talking too low or too high a volume, not too fast, not too slow. And well, it's usually right. Usually it's better to talk loud because now you have to kind of typically in public speaking, what you need to do is gauge the audience. You need to speak like you're talking to the back of the room. Um, that's not advice that my teacher gave me. That's advice that my dad gave me. And I agree with that more because he actually used to teach classes, and to me that makes more sense. What I found is that when you're in practice, when you're in the actual class, you need to talk like you're actually talking to the teacher, not the students. That's usually better, but sometimes depending on the teacher, they might grade you based on how loud. But it's better to go loud than to go quiet. Um, and I think if somehow you are too loud, they'll let you know. Either someone will give you some kind of cue or something, but I've never had that problem of going too loud in school. Um, I maybe had like one time, but this was not even was in school. It was like one time outside of school where people thought I spoke too loudly, and they thought I was like mad or something. Um, yeah, but I've never really had that big of a problem. My problem was either not knowing what to say or speaking too fast. Oh, oh yeah, I hate that. That's the thing. Sometimes people pressure you to do something like a speech like that, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna go full out, and then you realize going full out is too much. Yeah, and then the thing is, when doing public speeches or speaking like in that sort of formal setting, comes with practice. Really it's best to practice. Um, the thing, yeah, doing that helps a lot. In my case, I didn't really have practice. I kind of no, actually, I take that back. The only practice I had was practice from where or jobs or where I worked. Um, yeah, so that was basically the only really practice I can really think of that helped me come more ready for those classes. But in general, those classes are not tough. I've never had any problems with them. Some communication classes do sometimes give exams on certain like terms. For example, what like um, name five important factors in determining proper speaking or something like that. And sometimes they give you like an hour to write like a small essay about each like factor or something like that. Usually it's like a small paragraph or something. Um, but yeah, doing community. Well, that's cool. No, you were telling me earlier that you were working on the game. Um, but yeah, so that was basically the most like a gist of what I had to do to get my 2 year degree. Um, but yeah, that was kind of like a basic, but it took me a while because one, I kind of lost a year on that first college. Then, um, yeah, basically, I finished a 2 year degree at this community college, this different one, and I found that usually smaller schools sometimes are better than large schools. Not always, um, but from my experience, there tends to be better quality of education at a smaller school. And I'm not sure why, but I think it's either teachers are not overwhelmed as compared to other schools, or just maybe it's more relaxed. But depends on the school, the course, and all that. I mean, everyone kind of has their own experience. But starting this new school, it's been tough so far. My four classes right now are the college algebra, which is the fourth time I'm taking it. Um, I am very concerned for that class. Um, then environmental, all of your course, yeah. Um, so I take environmental economics, which I have good hopes for, but I'm not sure what it's going to be like. Then I have database and spreadsheets, which is like a computer class. And then my fourth class, which I have no clue how it's going to go, It's called human resource management. Basically, management of human resources. Basically, how to talk, like dealing with people in a business. Um, and usually that deals with what people who work in human resources. So that's like in a business, especially of large companies, they have divisions of employees who work with everything from like hiring employees, firing employees sometimes, not always. Payroll, like making sure payment goes to the employees, dealing with problems in the workplace like um, preventing laws being broken, preventing like discrimination, um, any kind of harassment at work, anybody who's having problems like behavioral problems with other staff people. And usually, sometimes in some businesses, they help employees who are like living in a bad situation or they have trouble getting to work or trouble performing at work. That kind of tends to be a general area of what human resource management teaches. But I think my teacher or my course is going to be more focused on like what laws to prevent breaking. Like um, here's an application that a job has given. Scan what is illegal for them to ask and what's not illegal. Um, yeah, and then it turns out like one thing I learned today, which I thought was interesting, was our teacher said that in our state, North Carolina, um, well, this is what she said. I don't know for sure. I never looked at the actual law, but I'm going to believe her for now. That if you are a victim of harassment or discrimination or something like that at work, or like a big thing on the news, like sexual assault is a big thing that people have been talking about. In our state, not only you can sue the organization or the business that you work for, you can also sue the individual. So if you're being discriminated, you can sue the actual business and then sue the person who's discriminating you in our state, which is interesting to know, but in practice, when are you really going to be using that unless you work for that human resource department? Um, but it's still good to know depending on where you are. I mean, in general, just don't. There's no reason to really act up at work, but some people still do that. And in our state, yeah, it's kind of like you have to know laws and some political stuff in that class, but like I've never really taken a political science class or any law classes, and I probably should have taken a class before this class, but when I take an only prerequisite that I had was like I took an introduction to what do they call it? They call it like principles of management or introduction, some kind of management class in community college, and they said, hey, that works as a prerequisite for this class, and they told me, hey, you need to take this class in order to graduate. So I just went ahead and took it. Um, but that's good. Yeah, I've been. Well, the thing about acting is, you have to know the whole what some people call the game. In terms of acting, what people need to do. See, what you have to do is you have to know what's trending. You have to know what they're going to make. And I've also heard in Hollywood, you have to also be careful because there's different scandals that can happen. Um, and also, a big thing recently that I've been researching is that depending on the studio or who you're acting with, um, some people are like politically motivated to do certain stuff to like change like the mindset of people or all kinds of different things. Like, say if you're acting and the movie studio wants to make a movie that convinces people like like guns are bad or something like that. They would have an actor that would need to do something that would convince the people who are watching that guns are bad, basically, to help motivate, hey, we need to ban guns, just as an example. Um, which is not always the case. There's also, I mean, different studios don't even do that. People just, make a movie to have fun, to, for entertainment. But you never know. Oh yeah. But oh, also speaking of which, what I've noticed with education, all that, people go to college for a degree, usually to get a certain kind of job. Um, most people I know, um, it typically, especially a large percent of the like girls I know back from high school, most of them decided to go into the medical field. Most of them nursing. And I mean, I don't blame them. I don't say it's a bad idea. I don't say it's a good idea. I just say that in general, it's not a bad idea. Because one, the whole industry is growing, because people always are getting sick, populations are growing, and there's always a need. Usually, especially now, um, my understanding is that there is a high demand of nurses, but I don't know how long there's going to be a high demand, especially if every single person I know, or majority of them, is trying to become a nurse. Um, what I do know is that I think there's a higher demand of doctors now than nurses, because we have so many nurses, but not enough doctors. And doctors know more than nurses usually. And nurses work in a certain areas, while doctors can work, I think, in general more. Because nurses, most of them work in a hospital, some of them don't. In case of like my mom, as an example, she used to work in a hospital, but she does not currently. She works in a school as a school nurse, and she found out in her case that she much more prefers working as a school nurse than working in the hospital, because you don't have um, certain factors or aspects. Like example, um, depending on the school system, nurses don't really have to do as much as they would need to do in a hospital. Like like one person I know, from their stories, like certain schools don't allow nurses to do certain things, um, like if you're a new kid who doesn't have any sort of prescriptions for medicine, like say if you're one day sick and you go to school, or you become sick at school, if you don't have any sort of like medical records from the doctor beforehand, they can't really give you any medicine there usually, um, especially if it's something serious. Like maybe they might be able to give you like an aspirin or something, but from what I've heard more recently, some schools are not even allowed to do that, because they don't want to have any liability. Like they don't want to get in trouble if they give the kid something that is like perhaps allergic to him or her, um, because you never know. And a lot of kids' parents, some of them, depending on their, can be crazy. I mean, just I've heard from some people, um, who've been in school systems before, parents of kids, can be crazy. I mean, the craziest story I heard was, God, I'm trying to think who was the person I heard this from. I don't remember their person, but this was like a kid was sick, or they fell and hurt their knee or something, and they had to call the parents, the kid's mom or something, and the kid's mom was um, like not really listening to the staff person, or just I think it was some kind of school staff member. And basically they're saying, well, the kid's fine, but they, well, basically they fell, or this happened and we need you to pick them up. And the parent interprets that as, oh, they need to be picked up and taken to the hospital. And the parents, this turns out the parents is actually a paramedic. They work as a professional paramedic. And because of that, they start sending in the whole like paramedic squad to the school. So you get like 4 or 5 paramedic cars to the school because the person somehow calls in that, oh, kids are getting sick at the school. So you get the whole like like squadron of trucks going to the school, and everyone's like trying to figure out what's going on and all that. So so in some situations, you have to be careful of that. What was I saying? Oh, I was going to talk about. I was going to tell you about my crazy jobs that I had to work. So my first actual job, um, like where you pay, like you work and like from 18 all that. Because I when I was like young, I did a little bit of like lawn care and like mowing lawns and all that. Um, which as a young kid I don't recommend it. I recommend at least having prior doing some physical like hard labor before you do lawn mowing. Especially if you're a young kid. Um, if you're working with like, because what I did was I worked with like a company, or not a company. Who did I work with? I worked with somebody who would be able to give me like houses, but he worked with like a company. And yeah, basically it's tough. Like if you're working, especially in the summer, it's hot and get tired easily. Um, but my first actual job was I worked in a movie theater, and I worked there for like 3 years. And I don't even know why I worked there that long, but um, yeah, it wasn't like the best job in the world, but it wasn't a bad job. Because they first paid me minimum wage, which was like 7.25 an hour. Then, um, I see at that time everyone made minimum wage, as far as I know. Um, but by the time I left, around that time, a lot of stores like McDonald's, Walmart, and a lot of like entry jobs, they pulled up their minimum wage for entry employees to like $8 or $9. Usually something like $10 or less. On very rare occasions, you find a business that offers something like 11 or $12 an hour. Um, that's not the well. Let me check what minimum law is. I'm not even sure what minimum law is right now. Let me check something right quick here. Because as far as I know, oh, okay. Are you from Canada? Oh, okay, so Canada is a whole different country. I'm talking about the United States. Um, yeah, and Canadian dollars are actually worth slightly less than US dollars. And the only reason I know that is because I actually worked at a job where we did currency exchange. But Canadians almost, I like to say almost, but it's not exactly. Some depending on who you're asking and depending on the exchange rate of the day, Canadian monies can be close to US dollar or significantly less. Um, some days I've seen it as worse as like 60 Canadian for every $1, or was it like oh, $1 Canadian is like 60 US cents or something like that. Um, and so it's sort of interesting once you go into that. But basically, $7.25 was the minimum when I started. I don't know if it's like that in the US still or not, but I worked that for like a year, and then they changed the system where I could work as a bartender at the movie theater. Even though depending on where you're at, there's some like restrictions. Some people say, hey, you need a license. Some people say, hey, you need to be at least 21. Um, turns out where I work, the law was you have to be at least 18 in order to handle alcoholic beverages. That means like if you have a bottle of beer or something like that, and someone wants to buy a bottle. Um, Typically, I don't know what they usually are charged now. Depends on where you buy it, I guess. Anywhere from $1 for a bottle to 50 cents a bottle, or on the high end, I've seen it as much as $6 a bottle for something that's like, yeah, it depends on where you get it. Um, Movie theaters usually it's like $5 a bottle. Well, when I started, it was like $3 a bottle, but at the end, it was more like five. Um, and I worked as a bartender, and they would give us tips. So that was my favorite because it was the least amount of physical labor and where you made the most money. The only danger is like make sure you don't break glass, make sure you don't cut yourself or hurt yourself or any way. Um, the other big thing was make sure you don't get people drunk. Make sure you don't sell alcoholic beverages to people who are already drunk. Make sure you check IDs. Make sure, and it had like a good amount of little things here and there that you needed to know, and you get to learn um, some stuff about bartending, some stuff about the restaurant industry. In my case, my first job, I learned a ton about beer. Now, I don't drink at all, um, and now most of my friends um, that I know do drink, but I don't. I stay away from that. And it's kind of like my own personal choice and sort of health medical reasons behind that as well. Um, oh, it's just I don't. I know people who get drunk. It's just I don't know if I like the idea of getting drunk. Like I never even tried it before, but I don't want to try it. Just something about it like deters me, like puts me off or something. I don't really know what it is. But depending on the person, I don't think there should be a prohibition like there was in the U.S. before. Back what was that, 1920s or something like that. Um, like I wouldn't go as far as to do that, but in my state, for example, I learned the law when I first started there that that it's in my state illegal on Sundays from I don't know what the time. It's like basically once Sunday starts, like basically midnight till 12. You cannot sell alcoholic beverages, and the idea was like this is the time people go to church, and North Carolina is like down the south of the U.S., so the South U.S. in general is very religious, um, and basically there was by law you're not allowed to do that. So basically Sunday mornings, if you're working Sunday mornings, there's like nothing to do in terms of that. Um, but I didn't just work bartender. I worked as a cashier. I worked as a what else did I work as? I worked as a like sold popcorn, sold soda and all that. But our movie theater also had a kitchen. We sold pizzas, we sold French fries. Um, we had like unusual stuff. We sold salads, which depending on where you're at, it can be a little bit unusual for movie theater. But we had like fried Brussels sprouts, which was probably one of the weirdest things that we sold. Liked it when I because what we did was like in the U.S. that sounds it sounds almost crazy, but for me, I don't think it's crazy. I think it's actually a brilliant idea because what we would do is we would take Brussels sprouts, like raw Brussels sprouts. We would cut them in half and we would put it in our deep fryer where we would fry like fries and all that. So we would fry them up for usually not long, maybe like at most a minute. I think it was probably like less than that. Um, because I think you can. I might be wrong, but I think you can eat Brussels sprouts raw. Even I don't know. Some people do it in salads, but we would fry them up, and then we would put um, like a balsamic vinegar like glaze on top of that. So you had, if you like balsamic vinegar, you would like that on there. And on top of that, they would for some reason put like either fried onions or a mix of usually they'll take red onion and they'll mince. the red onions, and put a little bit of that. But I would just like the Brussels sprouts with the glaze on it. But yeah, that was something that people thought was weird. I thought it was interesting, and not everybody bought it, but enough people bought it that they kept it on the menu. Um, and I think like in a restaurant that would be good, but for a movie theater, I'm not sure if that would be something I would recommend because it's not like a main high demand item that you would get in comparison to like a pizza. And Brussels sprouts, pizzas in general, you could just the idea, like not even knowing the price, it would make sense to charge more for a pizza than Brussels sprouts. But they would charge. See, I don't know what the prices of pizza in Canada is, but in general, where I am at, it's considered a good deal if you can get a slice of pizza for $1. Um, but we have a place called Little Caesars where you can order a whole large pizza for $5. Now it's like, yeah, and I used to love it a lot when I was young. Now I kind of don't really eat it because I think I can probably make my own pizza that's better. Um, or just buy ingredients from a store and make my own pizza better. Even though it won't cost like $5, it probably costs. Actually, it might cost depending on what kind of pizza you make. But when I was young, I would always eat Little Caesars for pizza whenever I wanted to get pizza. Then my sister would go for like Domino's. Domino's pizza was anywhere from like I think the smallest pizza they had was maybe like at least $6. But on average, it's anywhere from $8 to $10. I've seen it as high as $16 for pizza, a whole pizza if it's some kind of like specialty pizza. Um, but yeah, in movie theater, I worked as cashier, bartender, also worked in the kitchen, so I was like a dishwasher, which they had me do for a very long time. So dishwasher, like a fry cook as well, and a front of the line. Basically, it's like everybody prepares stuff and they give it to you, and you make sure everything is good. Sometimes you add like sauces and stuff on foods, or you put it in like a container. And I kind of liked the job, but they didn't pay well at all. It was like $7 or something like that. And then when I was dishwasher, they moved it up to 8. And then at most, I made like one time when I was a fry cook, they paid me like $10. And everything was good. So I was making somewhere around $8 to $10 an average. That's without tips. With tips, um, I know one day it was like a Monday, and I made like $150. And yeah, and it was good. Um, but then the company went out of business, so another company bought them out. Um, I'm trying to think. Is it a good idea for me to? I'll say the name. So another company. So I worked for a company called. Trying to think if I'm able to say it. Actually, I'm gonna just not say just for be careful. So basically, a large name brand movie chain bought the company, and because our company had things their own way and not the way the company wanted them, they changed everything. And what they did was like they changed the menu, um, which is okay. I wasn't it didn't bother me, but what they did was they paid me less, like 7.50, and then they paid 7.75, and I wasn't liking that. And from there, um, afterwards, what happened was I basically quit because they had different management, and then the management was like, I thought they were kind of mean to the employees, and I didn't like it. And at that point, I had school. I was finishing my 2-year degree. I was like, basically, I had enough of them. So I left that movie theater, and then I went for one of their competitors. Worked as a bartender there. Didn't make as much as in tips, but they paid me $8 an hour, which was more than what I made at the first movie theater in just wage pay. I did make some tips, but it was nowhere near what I made at the first place. It was maybe like 20 bucks here and there, 15, 10. And they had me do a lot more cleaning than the other company. And it was so bad, they had me one time stay up to 3 in the morning, just mopping, sweeping, doing dishes, and just a bunch of things that in my mind, I didn't like. And yeah, I mean, if you come in, like they schedule you, usually it's like 5 to close. And you would think, oh, okay, it's probably like 5 p.m. to something like 11. Um, but no, if you're working like 5 to 3 in the morning, that's, well, one more than 8 hour shift. And usually 8 hours, for most people I know, is tiring. Um, so I worked as a bartender for that second movie theater for like maybe half a year. Um, and then I quit that place because I found a small restaurant that was owned. I think it was well, it was Russian. Yeah, it was a Russian restaurant which was new for the area where I lived. And I figured, oh, let me go work there because perhaps with my previous experience and with my school, but at that time I didn't finish my associate's degree yet, but I did have some classes that I finished. So I figured, well, perhaps I have a chance at becoming a manager there because most other jobs I know, for some weird reason, they almost make it a requirement for you to have an associate's degree before even becoming an assistant manager, which I don't really know why they have that. But I figured, hey, if I go work at this place, I will have a chance at becoming a management there. And then at the same time, at that point, I was thinking to myself, hey, I need to figure out how to invest or even try to make my own business because being a business owner just economically makes more sense to me than just being a worker because a worker works for somebody. Why not become that owner or like start my own business? So and I thought, well, perhaps working at this Russian little cafe would help me like learn how to start work my own little cafe, perhaps. And at that point, I was kind of like into learning, and I was thinking of everything like how do I start up a food truck? How do I open up a little cafe in the middle of like some area? And I just noticed that it was like a lot of money that you needed to have beforehand in order to start up an actual business. Like the cheapest place I could find, you would need like at least 30,000 a year. I'm like, well, where am I going to get $30,000? So I mean, even if I were to save up, you never know. You might perhaps save up 30,000, but who knows if you're going to make that money from opening up that business? And I thought, well, maybe food truck would be an option, but then you have, starting a business, you need to know the laws, you need to have a license, you need to have insurance in case somebody for some reason decides to sue you, you lose everything or whatever. And just like as insurance is, it just seemed like a lot to have to start up. Um, yeah, so I worked at that Russian cafe only for like a month, and I kind of quit. But then they were trying to make it look like I was fired from there, and I kind of quit because things weren't going well there. And right after I quit, I got a really good job working at an airport, our city's airport, and I worked in um, a place where we did like currency exchange. I won't mention any names or any companies or anything like that, um, because the place changed so much within the 1 year period that I'm just going to call it currency exchange. Um, and that was a whole like another experience because it was basically a whole different industry. I came from like restaurants and like some people call it hospitality, but I just call it restaurant business. And then you have movie theater business as well. So the thing is, because that restaurant they also claimed that Russian restaurant that I never worked for them, that I was like training, then I left. That's what they kind of made it look like, and that wasn't true. I mean, if I'm physically there doing something, I'm technically working, especially if you're paying me. So, I mean, that was I didn't really like the whole thing, but I can't even put that on my resume because I didn't really work there long enough, and the business went out of business like a couple months later. So they don't exist even anymore either. And it's not like I can call up there and someone will vouch for me because that person probably, won't support me or whatever. But working at the airport, which was my last real big job, I do have technically a job now, but it's not really much of a job. Um, so currency exchange was a really interesting job because it deals with the financial industry. You're not really working at a bank, but you're kind of dealing with stuff that a bank would do. So, like as an example, your typical restaurant you do, or like if you're a cashier somewhere, maybe you might have maybe if the whole day you'll deal with maybe like a couple $100, maybe like 100, 200, 300 for like a whole day. Um, but as a currency exchange, you're dealing with thousands of dollars at a time. And not only that, you have to know every single thing that there's out there. Basically, oh, sorry, I think my mic went off for a second. Every single explosions. I don't know why. Is it gone now? Okay, I don't know what that was, but um, you need to know like every single thing that deals with working at a currency exchange. So that means you have to know what money is. You have to know what currency is. You have to understand how countries work and what their economy is like, and why do people travel here and there. And um, for example, U.S. is a lot different than Canada. In terms of Canada, you have like people. I don't know what that is. I need to check my mic. It could be from your game because my mic usually doesn't do that. I don't know. I'm gonna check my mic. But yeah, I had to. That's weird, Wes. Is it loud? Let me see if I turn down my volume. Wonder if that will fix it. How about now? Are you still hearing that noise? No? Okay, cool. Um, so yeah, like I don't know, like Canadian dollars were um well if it gets too much I might try to rejoin Discord here, but yeah, basically you had to know about money across the world, how every country kind of works, what people do in order to like travel to the country. Like in terms of where I am, my city is considered to be a banking city. Um, I think we're only like second to like New York, um, from what I've heard. But that's funny. But so you had to deal with like basically people who travel in the airport. So you got business people, and you have people traveling on vacation. Then you got like school students, and my first like I guess when did I start? So like my first 7 or 8 months working at the whole job was a learning experience. So you basically learned as you went on the job. Yeah, it could be from your game. If you add something into the game, maybe it's like there's a trigger or sensor that's causing the noise. But uh, well, what I was going to say was that after the first 8 months, it turned more into like a selling game. Basically, you're a salesperson trying to get as much money as you can from the customer, and it just it started becoming like greedy, the whole business. Like you're trying because our company where I work, they took such a huge fee and chunk of the money. Like you would think, oh, like say if you're traveling from Canada into the US, the US they won't take Canadian money. So what would you do? You would go to exchange money, probably at the airport. Is what? Yeah, I don't know what caused the noise. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so well at least it's not from me. Okay, um, so I don't know what the big. I only know one airport in Canada. I don't. Where in Canada did you say you stay near? Is it near Toronto? Edmonton. I can't. Is that more on the west side or east side of Canada? Is it near the border of the US? Okay, do you know what US state by chance is near it? No? Oh. Well, I know for example in Toronto, I think all the currencies exchange stuff is run by our company. I'm not sure, but I know we have a major division in Toronto. Um, but yeah, basically we took like 10 to 15% of the whole transaction. Basically, it's like say if 100 Canadian dollars would get you 100 US, if it was that kind of exchange rate, they would be like, oh, typically for 100 it would be 85, but we have a $10 fee, so that you're going to get 75. That's kind of how bad of an exchange it was, and people would be like, oh, well, I don't know better, or they would go on Google and they would see the exchange rate, and people would have to tell them, oh, Google's not always accurate, Google's not always correct. Google has an old exchange rate or something. Like basically, Google is usually right, um, and they are usually almost always up correct. Very rarely are they incorrect. Um, but my best recommendation, if you're looking to see what the exchange rate is, don't just do Google. Google usually just shows you a general idea. Um, check out a couple of websites and see what the websites say because they show the actual exchange rate is based on the stock market exchange of the two currencies. Like right now, as an example, let me look at my screen for a second here. Okay, so if I go to, let's just go with eBay here, US dollar to Canadian dollar. Current exchange rate, every one US dollar equals $1.33 Canadian dollars. So if you're exchanging one Canadian dollar, going to Google, you should be getting 75 cents. If you're exchanging like 100 Canadian, it's like $75.40 US you get. And that's like the ideal thing. Thing is, if you are like exchanging with an exchange company, they would do something like take that 75, let's just call it, say it's 75, and they would do maybe like 0.85. So it'd be like $63 they would tell you what you're going to get before any fees. So they basically rip you off of the exchange rate sometimes. Some companies are fair and they'll tell you the exact exchange rates. Depends on who you're dealing business with. But I'm just giving you my company as an example. They will tell you this fake exchange rate. Then they'll charge you like $10. So you're taking $10 off of that. And then they'll be like, oh, well, we have a deal right now. If you like, for only $5, we'll get you a currency exchange. That's what they told you at first. It's free to do currency. Like they actually no, they said it was $5 to do currency exchange. What that is, it is a sort of an okay promotion, or it used to be at first. It was a deal like if you pay $5, so basically we charge you another $5. So you take $5 off of that, so it's like down to like $48. Yeah, which is already bad. But deal is, if you get our currency return guarantee, come back to us with whatever Canadian you have back. Yeah, basically, if you come back with whatever you have left, we don't charge you anything on the way back, and you'll get the stock market rate. So that basically that 48.75. Let's just say it's $48. They'll give you back 63 Canadian, which is what the real exchange rate is, instead of it being like only like 40 Canadian or something like that. So that's what we did at first, which was still really bad. But in the end, what they did was they automatically charged $5, and they're like, "Oh, it's just free to exchange it back if you like." So they didn't. So that's basically we had to tell them that hey, it's not optional; it's part of the deal. And you don't get the exchange rate; you get our preferred rate. So basically, we ripped them off on the way back as well. Um, but what I know what to do now is the best way to exchange money. It's not at the airport. Usually, we recommend doing a bank, but it depends on what the bank is. Now, see, that's like if you're doing research. The actual, like, if you have street knowledge and know what to do, and this is what I recommend doing. This is my personal recommendation. If you know someone who's traveling to Canada and who has U.S. money, cut a deal with them. In fact, if you want to, you could, depending on the person, you could charge them a deal or like a thing, which I tried to do at one point. Um, this was like not when was this? This was after I stopped working with them. But it never really worked out. It's like you could say, hey, if you want, like, say if it's $100 Canadian US dollars, and for $100, like a person would get 132 Canadian for what I see here. You could say something like, hey, if you have $100, I'll give you 100 Canadian. So you make like 32 Canadian bucks off of that transaction. But it depends on what you can do. If you want to be fair, you give them 130, but it kind of gives you an idea. But banks usually they have a set percent rate that they take. Usually it's like 5% or less. I don't know what the rates are. That's what it is in the US. I don't know what it is in Canada. Um, but let's see here. Well, I'm just giving you as an example of what I know um, with US banks. Um, but I've been to places where it's so cheap to exchange money. Like I've been to Russia. There, it's like they take maybe at most 1%. If you might see somebody doing it like two or three, but one is like their standard because people there, one, are smart. They know what the value of money is as compared to people who don't really know it. I mean, like if you ask your average person here in the US about something, like, I mean, it's unlikely they will know. But that's kind of like an example with just US and Canadian. But there's like 100 different currencies out there, and not all of them are the same. Like you have Mexican pesos, you have Japanese yen, you have the euro, which is, yeah, Bitcoins, but we didn't deal with Bitcoin. The thing with Bitcoin is it is electronic money, it's virtual currency. And I have no personal experience in it because you have to actually um, it's almost like if you're trading stocks and bonds with like on the stock market, it's almost the same thing. But in practice, I don't know how you would really do that. Because what's interesting about Bitcoin is like any currency. Problem with Bitcoin is it's like really high value. So you have to deal with like fractions basically. And I don't even know what the exchange with Bitcoin is. Let me see what that is right now. All right, let's see. US dollar to Bitcoin. So one Bitcoin is just over 3,600 US dollars. Yeah, so it'd be like, oh, will sell you what is tenth? No, that's a hundredth. Okay, I'll pay you 1/100th of a Bitcoin per hour, which is $36 an hour. Like that's kind of like a weird. See, I'm not too crazy about that, but in our job, we deal with physical currency. Some currency places actually exchange with gold and silver, but it's always like a really difficult thing because you have to tell, hey, is this real gold or silver? Is this, how much of it is actually gold? What if it's like just, a rock that's painted with gold or something like that? Because you never know, people will try to scam. Um, but let's just say like there's also weird currencies like let's as an example, one I know. Let's put in uh Vietnam. Vietnamese currency, their name is Dong, like a Dan basically. I think he's from Vietnam. So this is like his currency. Um, which I don't know if it is or not. I'm just kind of assuming here. Um, like $1 is 23,245 dong. So a really weird number. So like 10,000 dong is 43 US cents. Or yeah, let me go to Canadian to give you more of a idea what I'm talking about. Okay, so 10,000 Vietnamese dong is 57 Canadian cents. Um, so those are examples of currencies that have hyperinflation. Basically, when the value of their currency kind of changes drastically. Um, but you're kind of probably wondering, like, how is it that one currency is less than another, and it's all dealing with demand, and kind of with supply, but not really, because any government can print off as much currency as they want. Yeah, but it's all in demand, and it used to be that currency would be um, equal to like their value in like gold or silver, which is what the U.S. used to be about 60, 70 years ago. And they stopped doing that. And I'm not sure exactly the history as to why they do that. But it's kind of unclear. But um, it's almost like an IOU type of thing. It's like we're right now exchanging in IOUs. Um, but not even that's actually correct. It's like let me see if I can figure out how to explain it. Like, oh, as another example, like Vietnamese currency, you don't see them like one dong, two dong. You see them in denominations of the thousands. Like, here's a 20,000 for this. Here's 500,000 for this, which sounds crazy, but um, if you think about it, why do we, use dollars and not cents? It's kind of the same thing. Like cents used to be worth more than what they're worth now. Like like my grandmother as an example, she said back, and I'm talking about my American grandmother. When she was a kid, she could buy a pack of gum for a penny because that's what things cost back then. versus now a penny won't get you anything. And in Canada, they just banned the penny because it's so wor- worthless. Yeah, it's expensive to make and they don't hold their value. The US still has their penny, which you never know. Maybe in the future we'll get rid of it. Some people argue that. Well, actually, the people who, well, from what I've read, the reason we haven't banned the penny is because one, we have a very huge collectors market who love to collect coins, and second, people who work in the treasury don't want to be losing jobs. So that's why they voted for, hey, let's keep it. And nowadays, a lot of people don't really use that much of physical currency. They try to do more of like credit cards and debit cards and all that. Um, and in some places, no people don't even use physical currency. Like an example would be Zimbabwe in Africa. Their currency devaluated so much that they don't even have a national currency anymore. And people just use their phones and they trade with whatever currency they want to. And usually it's like, and what's crazy is I could actually do that now if I wanted to. And I know actually how to do that. Um, like remember I was telling you about I was trying to start my own business. What I have now that actually works, it's not great, but it's something. Is I have an eBay like business, and I don't make much. I make less than what I would make if I worked minimum wage. But the thing is, I have a lot of potential for growth. Um, but I haven't. I don't. I'm in school right now. That's why I'm not full time working on eBay. But I make like on average like yeah. But YouTube, I don't make any money on YouTube right now. Yeah, yeah. To make money on YouTube, you need like thousands of views at least as a minimum. Okay, so I'm actually almost there then. But yeah, even with my account that had 164, I didn't make any money because I didn't make thousands of views. I had two videos that had over 1,000. Yeah, but that's like PayPal. I don't know if you know what that is. PayPal. Okay, cool. So you know what I'm talking about. Like this is my so PayPal is something I know, but let me see if I can find my most. See, I have some of my old videos are sort of stupid videos, but some of them have a lot of views. Um, okay, well, I had a video that I took down, but I have one right now. One video that's about like my coin collection, which is an old video. That did like 5 years ago. It has over 1,000 views. Yeah, and then I have like a stupid video, how to shade like a cube, which I did like 6 years ago. That almost has 1,000. I'm at like 889 views. And it's just titled "How to Shade Geometric Figures, the Cube." And I mean, some people don't know how to do it, but apparently it's something that 889 views came to. Um, which is interesting, but kind of never know. But let's see here. Oh, I was going to do eBay. So eBay is something I'm really testing out right now, sort of too, because I'm not sure and I'm following different people right now. Um, and I kind of back in high school, I kind of played around with eBay, but I'm trying to make it like professional now. And it's gone up to the point where I've actually decided to pay for eBay subscription. And what that is basically if you make you have an eBay store. If you do it for free with eBay, you can only list. And see, I don't know what it's like in Canada. I'm basing this off of the U.S. system, and eBay was started in the U.S., but they have a Canadian division, and I actually get to talk with people from Canada fairly often on eBay. And I mean, Canada is so. I mean, since it borders the U.S., I have no problem dealing with business with. See, right now I'm at the point where I can sell. If I wanted to, I could probably even sell to like dangerous countries if I wanted to. Like if I wanted to, I could sell to Cuba. I could sell. Maybe I could sell to North Korea, but that's probably a bit of a stretch right now. But I could probably. I'm very certain I could sell to Cuba if I wanted to. And I've sold to Russia before, and I know U.S. and Canada don't, especially the U.S. They don't have a good relationship with Russia. I don't know why, to be honest, but I could. Yeah, well, it depends on who you're asking, because some people say that's what happened. Some people have evidence that didn't. To be honest, I don't know. But when I talk to Russians, they think that there's no reason for them to have Trump. But then again, I have talked to people who say, well, that makes sense because this and that. But I don't see. I don't really know the whole pocket politics thing. But um, and well, the thing is, a lot of people think that too. And to be honest, my the last election, I could have honestly voted, but I did not. And the reason, well, let me think, did I vote? Well, not really vote, I would say, because I didn't know enough about the candidates, and I don't know who will do what. And even with the research that's out there or what they say, politicians are not always truthful. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's definitely out there. And I heard the build a wall, it's like over 50 million now, but they need a lot more than 50 million to build a whole wall. Yeah, to be honest, I don't really care one way or the other sometimes because it hasn't really affected me personally. And I know legal and I know illegal people, and I don't see any real big difference because everyone has their own story. Everyone has different reasons for what they want to do in life and all that. So it's, hard to really tell. But I was going to tell you about eBay, which I found to be interesting. So let me go to listings right now. So I, at one point, you can just about anybody, and I found this to be very true. eBay thinks that I think I might be thinking about somebody else, but in general, you can find at least $1,000 worth of stuff to sell in your house that you don't need anymore. It might be like an old shirt or like a pair of shoes you don't like anymore, or maybe you have like some little collectible toy or like some old video games or something you nobody plays with anymore. Um, and that's what I started off doing, and then I started seeing what other people do who do eBay professionally. And with eBay, I'm trying to get up to the professional level, but that's going to be such a hard thing to do. It's not easy, but um, see what I'm at now is like I have old stuff in my house that I'm selling that I don't need, but I also have stuff that I can source. Like for example, with clothes, which seems to be something I'm fairly good at right now. You can source clothes at anywhere like Goodwill, sometimes flea markets, but I've never really done it at flea markets, but I've heard of people doing it. Yard sales. Sometimes people give you stuff as donations, like friends or family. I don't think where else. Sometimes some like stores give like items on discount, and you can then take the discount items and then sell them. But keep in mind, who's chatting? Oh, um, so like what I have. Let me go to my actual store. So I have my big thing right now. I'm selling like the most of are is clothing, but I also have old books. I have toys. I have some old video games. Um, some like coins. What else do I have? I have artwork, music CDs, DVDs, stamps, electronic stuff. Yeah, some people collect old TVs, depending on what it is and all that. But you have to, yeah. So maybe there's somebody out there who will buy your TV. You never know. But the thing is, you have to know how eBay works. For example, eBay came into the online world with the idea of auctions. I first started off with auctions, and I found out that I don't like them, but do like them. But they're not my first choice of what to do with, because what price do you set an auction at? And what if something doesn't sell at the amount you want it to sell it at? And so what I have been doing is, so when you think, when I first started off, I had like, I don't remember who, somebody gave me like old, oh, I know what it was. It was like kids' clothes. It was like school uniforms or whatever. And I put them on auction, and they all were like selling for like $1, $2, and it wasn't really crazy, but I was like, well, maybe I don't really want $1. Maybe I want, like $5 or $10 for something. And I switched from online auctions to what they call fixed price. So basically, it's a set price that you're selling at. But what I do now is also put things at best offer, so that someone who, for example, if I'm selling a shirt for like $10 and I got it for free, I don't mind if someone offers me like $8 or $7. Maybe I'll even give it away for $5. Depends on what it is. So I do that. And then also a tricky thing that I'm trying to figure out now is, how do you ship the item so that your buyer gets the item? In my case, I use um, what I found to be the cheapest option right now is to do United States Postal Service, so USPS, um, like mail. Basically, I wrap, like for example, as the shirt, I wrap the shirt up in a package and then ship the package off. But depending on, see, with us, it depends on the weight. And um, and it's like if the item weighs under a pound, it's usually less than $4. I usually pay around $2 to $3 for shipping for each item, because this is including the cost of where, like, how you're going to ship it. You need to have an envelope. Envelopes are not free. Um, yeah, so there's cost to that as well. So usually it's about $2 to $3, but if it's over a pound, it costs at least $7 to ship. And the thing is, not all buyers want to be. See, the option is either I pay the shipping or the buyer pays for shipping. Yeah, that's an option as well, to find some old, and I've been doing that too. And um, but what I've been doing is I've been selling shirts. Uh, like I have little plastic figurines from a board game that I'm selling right now. I have a ton of books. Um, what do I have? Oh, It's a game called Heroescape. Um, Let me see if I can send you a photograph of Heroescape. It used to be very popular back about 10 years ago, and it was like ranged for all ages. Like not just like little kids would play with it. Basically, everybody would play the game, but it stopped getting popular, and then they just kind of went out of business. I'll send. Let me see if I can find. I'm trying to copy the image into Discord here. Stop thief. Well, I just sent you an image of what Heroescape kind of looks like. Yeah, basically these are images of people playing the game, and it's like a hexagon like tiles, and you have little figures, and yeah, yeah. So I actually have a whole collection, but I sold a lot of it on eBay, and I have actually managed to even. Yeah, and when it came out, I was collecting it. They would sell that. Well, I would get it at Walmart, and it would be like, let me see if I can find an example. Let's see, Heroescape box. They would sell a box from anywhere from like $10 to $12. For like a small box, if I can find one. There we go. And they have like people have collected them so much now that I can sell one figure for like at least $3. Depending on the figures, I can like I sold a well like a figure that small of a size. I sold the most largest. I sold one for $10 before for just one figure. But then they do also make huge figures as well. Um, like they make dragons. They make like dinosaurs, and especially the dragons. They're very collectible. And I have like a whole different series of dragons, like green dragons, black dragons, red dragons, white dragons, basically all the colors. Um, and they sell anywhere from like the cheapest one that I'm showing you in the photo there. That one kind of goes for $5 to $10 or so. Mine is priced at $5, and no one's still buying it. But I sold one for $30. Yeah, so I'm right now selling a lot of that, and I sell one every now and then. Thing is, they're not easy to ship because you need to find a box for them, and you don't want to have something that's too big. And they're fairly small. They're kind of the size of yeah, but you don't. I mean, it sucks, especially when you have like a bunch of different buyers buying just like one or two figures. And I don't just sell the figure; I actually sell them with a card that, like a playing card that they have. Like, let me see, I found it. Yeah, and so you have to figure out how do I ship the figure and the card so that one, the figure doesn't bend while it's shipping, and I don't destroy the card because the card's made out of paper. And so what I do now, yeah. So what I do now is I just find like a box of like some store, yeah, like a crayon box sometimes. Or what I've been doing is like food boxes, like a box of oatmeal or something like that, like a fairly smaller box. And what I find is because what I used to do was a really bad thing, and then one time a buyer actually bought something and they received the damage, so I had to refund them. Yeah, so that's another thing of cost doing business is of in case of incidentals, like say if the package gets lost in the mail or if like it gets destroyed or something. Um, oh, that's weird. um, I wonder if I can. I can probably go ahead and let me see if I can show it because eBay also has what's called a resolution center. Um, oh, that's not it. And I'm trying to find. Oh, I can't find it. Shoot. But I had a case where basically a buyer bought tiles, like plastic tiles, to the game, and they were packed in like a Ziploc bag, and I like bubble wrapped them, but it was a really. I think what happened was somehow they got crushed, and when they were crushed, the tiles were made of plastic, so they all just like broke into a bunch of pieces, like snapped and all that. And so the sure, what happened with your mom? Okay, so well, see that also happens too, and that is really big. You know, I've seen people have they talk about that with Amazon. Like when you order with Amazon, people claim, "Hey, I haven't received it." And the thing with eBay is that eBay has a system where I, as a buyer, can do that as well. But the thing is, they need tracking numbers. They need proof that the item is has been shipped and that it arrived. Because if you don't have that, then you don't have insurance. Basically, yeah, like insurance or proof that you shipped the item. So what they paid for, they would get the money back. Um, and that typically happens. Like the thing with eBay is what I've noticed is they have a whole division of sellers from China. And this is why, and I figured out why everything's made in China. And one, because the cost of doing, like, they don't pay people much at all in China. Anything. Some people don't even get paid. Yeah, basically, there's a lot of places where people barely get paid. So, like, they don't make anything close to what people in like Canada or US make. Um, Not only that, everyone who works in China, they work in a factory, so the cost of it, like even if you worked in a US factory, you know, things that are made in a factory are usually a lot less expensive to make versus handmade stuff. Um, and in addition, the Chinese government has an incentive for businesses where they can ship for free, which can save a lot of money. Um, Now, I think that's if you're in certain kind of businesses that the government supports. I need to read up on that. Um, but because some people from China who are not, I think as an individual, it's actually expensive to ship in China. There's a video. Um, I saw a video about shipping in China once. I can't remember the guy's name. Um, there's actually a really good channel I do recommend if you're interested in more about China. It's called ADV China. It's about two people who live in China. Um, one guy's from South Africa, the other guy's from the US. So one guy's kind of more like British, other guy's more like typical American. but they've been living in China for more than 10 years, and they both have professional like jobs there. One guy um, used to teach in a university in China. Another guy um, used to teach doctors like cultural differences between Eastern and Western countries. So it's China is kind of an interesting country, but you have to be careful. Um, and I mean that in like a really like, for example, I would be fair. I think if I were to go to China, I would be fairly okay. I probably would not be safe though. If I take a random American guy, I would. They would not be safe in China. I then reason behind that is because one, the language difference. Two, the cultural difference. The culture is vastly different from Western countries. Um, and I have to get used to that, and then get used to the whole government structure as well. But there are people who love China, and then there's people who like, well, I like the area, but I don't like way things are set up. So I, in certain ways, and then I would like to go to a different country. And then there's the thing about that whole area is there's a lot of different countries you can visit. But yeah, so anyway, there's Chinese sellers. They're selling stuff on eBay for like a penny, and with free shipping. So I don't know how that exactly works, but they're all like penny auctions. But I mean, I can get stuff on eBay for as low as a couple of pennies. Like, hey, I need to get a new phone case. I can get a phone case, like a little cheap plastic phone case, but it's a phone case for like a penny from China, free shipping. It'll take maybe like a month to get here, but hey, I only paid a penny. So sometimes you can find really cheap stuff on eBay. But what I like about eBay is that you get buyers from around the world. And I've sold now with this eBay account, my specific one that I have now, I've only had two international orders, and I'm trying to get more. Um, I had one guy from Germany, I had one guy from Israel, um, and they both bought shirts from me. And what I found is that I'll give like an example. You can source like do you I don't know if do they have Goodwill in Canada, or do you know what Goodwill is? No. Okay. Do you know what a thrift store is? Okay. So thrift stores are like secondhand goods, if you know what I mean by that. Basically, it's a store where people put in donations and the store sells what they donate. So basically, they do what I'm doing right now on eBay, but they do it in real life. They actually have a physical store. But like Goodwill, for example, is set up where they get donations and they sell donations, but they use that money for different things. They claim that it's not for profit, but it is for profit. Um, but they use some of that money that they make to, like, people work for Goodwill to get training jobs, or Goodwill also sometimes has training centers that help train people. Like they give computer skills for people who have never used computers before, or like practice like job interviews or application work and all that. Um, but I would get like shirts at Goodwill anywhere from like $5 or less. Usually I would get them from $4, $3, in some rare cases as low as $2. And I would look for high-end brands like Ralph Lauren, Nike, Adidas. Um, a big one that I'm going for right now is Brooks Brothers, if you've heard of them. And I like Brooks Brothers myself as well. I've actually started liking to wear them. They are a very old company, and they sell like very formal clothes like dress shirts, dress pants, suits and ties. But their stuff is very expensive. Like a shirt can go for $100. Like that's how expensive their clothes are. But if I buy a shirt that for like $5 at Goodwill, and I could turn around and flip it and sell it for like $30, I'd make $25 off a shirt, perhaps. But even after taxes and all that, would be like it would make at least $10 off the shirt after taxes. Now, if you times that by like 100, you already got $1,000. If now, thing is, I've never made $1,000 on eBay before, but the most I've made was well, to give you an idea as an average, just for eBay alone, um, when I first started off, I would make maybe something like $100 a month. I make at least like when I started my somewhere I have a list. Let me see if I can find my list. Where is Discord? There we go. So I have a list here. Like when I started this new eBay account last July, and it was like towards the end of July. So first month I made like $10. I sold maybe like a shirt or something. August I made like 100, so because I was going back to what I knew. Um, September and October I made like $500 in September, $500 in October. Then November, which right now is my record, I made $600. December I didn't do as well, but I made like 450. And I think it's because people were out in the holidays, like shopping or traveling. Not many people were doing online shopping that time. I think that's what happened, but I'm not sure. Um, January, I don't know what I'm at right now because I'm in school, so that's kind of been, impacting my eBay business in terms of not being able to spend as much time on eBay as I would before. All right, so let me see here. Well, I'm gonna stop talking about my personal life. I'm gonna go back to the game. Okay. Oh, what just happened? No, as I said, I'm gonna go back to Roblox and see how that's going. All right, let's see here.